Mr. Simonovskis, looks like everyone's abandoned you. Council, motion to resume, please. Marakis, Kim, all in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you. Mr. Simonovskis, why don't you just give us a quick run through you're up first.
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess what I speak to will set the tone for the rest of the presentations, I imagine. So what I'll do is I'll walk you through the tab 6, first section of the report, which is our Infrastructure and Environmental Services Department overview. We've spoken to, on page 6.1, we've spoken to the various services that we have within our department. I think maybe I'll just highlight a couple of things in the area here just to speak to either upcoming program changes or some new features of our program. We spoke about the water meter installations, and that's something that we are still pursuing on an annual basis as we move towards conversion of our aging inventory. There will be a report coming forward in the short term as to the number of meters we'll be changing out going forward. We'd like to advance that program a little bit. On the asset management and maintenance side, we did talk a little bit about some of the budget pressures around maintaining our existing facilities from an operational perspective, so that's going to be talked to in the presentation. There's also waste collection. Our waste collection contract, as you know, will be completed in basically the end of 2017, and there will be a report coming shortly to recommend award of a new contract for the next 7 years. So those are some areas that you're going to see some activity very, very soon. And then if I move to page 6.2, we have there our goals for 2017. And we're looking at the very first table from a community goals perspective. We're looking at incorporating recommendations for our facility asset management plan as part of our multi-year plan. And I'm hopeful that that will provide a lot more detail as to what some of the operational level asset improvements we're looking to do over the next 10 years. There's also some program, and something that you've seen in the past, but we're moving towards implementation for 2017 with regards to our stream erosion management plan. And this ties very closely with stormwater protection, as well as some of the goals and initiatives being led by the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority as part of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. And I also mentioned the greenhouse gas reduction strategy and the alignment with the provincial climate change program. I think this is something that is very noble to support from the perspective of aligning with provincial goals, which align with Canada's commitments to the Paris Accord and other global initiatives around climate change. Other department initiatives I've listed here are really related to efficiency and opportunities for streamlining our service delivery, or at least the essence of what we do as an organization, whether they actually directly touch our customers or not, to make our operations that much more efficient. The capital delivery alignment, which is at the bottom of page 6.2, is focusing on, I would coin it a specialization of our resources. We have pressures for additional operational staff, but we also have pressures for a growing capital delivery program related to R&R, rehab and replacement of our assets. Part of what we're asking for in this budget is an additional person related to capital delivery to take some of that responsibility away from our operational staff to allow them to focus on their operational responsibilities and really focus within that sphere of experience that they are most knowledgeable to deliver on. At the top of page 6.3, we have a number of lean initiatives that we've been either initiated already or that we're now moving to the actual implementation stage. The winter maintenance delivery alternatives we have looked at and are actually moving towards bringing some of that service in-house and reducing our reliance on contract services. We were actually hoping to do a pilot for this winter season, however, with some changes in key staff, from a risk perspective, we decided to defer that for 1 year. So that would be something we'll be looking to do in the latter part of 2017 for the 17-18 winter season. The water building and metering we talked about, and that is something that we were looking to advance our meter replacement program from 1,000 meters a year, which is our current rate of replacement, to 1,500 for the next 3 years. There will be a staff report coming forward to speak to that. The idea of that is to actually advance our I'd call it our break-even point or our optimal point for actually going to an automatic meter read and advancing that by 3 years, and then going back to 1,000 meters per year change thereafter. Our facility operations services review also identified some opportunities to sort of look at how we staff and deliver our frontline services for facility, primarily ice and pool facility operations. Really the focus here is to look at how we staff our buildings more efficiently from a full-time resource perspective, and bringing that value towards those peak periods of the operation, as well as piloting an evening supervisor to help organize and help support that staff in those off-peak, or those off normal day periods, but during our peak usage periods. And we also have planned a stormwater rate review exercise, which will verify our rates for our stormwater programs. Right now, we collect a fee for all of our both ICI and residential properties, and this is going to verify that program and make any adjustments on those rates as needed. Now, the financial tables, I will leave that for council to ask questions on. The information is presented as it has been in the past, and if there's any particular line items or any questions around those budget elements that council has, I'd be happy to answer those as part of the question and answer period. And then if I take you to tab or page 6.8, that section at the top of that page, the table there, identifies the key pressures that we're dealing with. Our budget request is an additional $793,100 from 2016 to 2017, and these costs are made up of the items that are listed in this table. The first item being the right sizing of our operating budget, which is driven primarily by operations related to facility and operating budget costs, as well as the energy costs that we spoke to. About 440,000 of the 595,000 request is focused on the facility operations side. The second line is another element related to the request for an evening facility supervisor, and it increases in our contract services within that program. Now, the detail sheet on that facility supervisor is shown on page 610, and it provides a bit of a description as to what that pilot program is about, but essentially it is to provide supervisory services during evenings and weekends when we don't have supervisory staff available, as we only have one facility supervisor dedicated to the key properties, being the ice and the pool properties. We also have our cost of living increase identified as a third line item, and the fourth being our new capital delivery position. And this is a capital delivery position that will be focused mostly on the roads. I call the R&R programs within the roads group. Again, this is an area that we were looking at efficiencies from a delivery perspective, and believe it's more efficient to deliver capital within that group by someone who's focused on and experienced with capital delivery process, rather than trying to have operational staff delivering projects, which is currently how we do it now. And it does create inefficiency in both their knowledge of capital delivery and product quality, as well as interfering with their normal responsibilities as operations staff. So this is intended to help us deliver those projects, but also focus efforts where they're most beneficial to the organization. And the last item is actually some contract savings that we achieved through some of the lean work that we did 2 years ago. And the two elements here are our street sweeping maintenance contract. In the past, we've contracted out street sweeping at a value of about $50,000 per year. We avoided those costs this year, and actually were able to do the entire town almost within the same time frame as we had in the past, with a contract fleet of about 5 vehicles. And the main reason for this is because of the elimination of sand in our street program, which both made the winter operation a lot more efficient, but also resulted in a lot less material to pull off the streets. So now we have two street sweepers that the town owns that are ours, the second just being purchased this spring, and we see no need for any further contracting of that service to any externals in order to meet our service levels internally. And the second piece of that is, of course, the reduction of the streetlight maintenance costs, which we were anticipating as part of the conversion from our streetlights to LED lighting. Now, I can just speak briefly to our outlook and essentially speak to the fact that we are seeing a shift in our services to more R&R work, more repair and replacement work. We are looking at shifting some of our efforts around how we deliver our other services and realigning again to refocus our efforts so that operational staff are focused on operational duties and that capital and replacement efforts are actually being focused on our experts who do that kind of work. I think it's important to recognize too that there will be additional positions requested in future years to work with the growing community as 2C area gets built out. Again, any opportunities that we can find to actually realign how our services are delivered will be brought forward, and those hopefully will offset or at least defer any requests in the future years. And with that, I think if I may turn it over back to Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Simonauskas. I'm going to ask the CAO to comment just a bit on the process change. It's slightly different from what we've done, and then we'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And of course, we always will do whatever council would like us to do in terms of process, but we're advancing a little different approach for this budget round than you've done in the past. You notice the next two sheets, 6.9 and 6.10, under infrastructure, are individual pages that detail, in this case, staffing. This is the same format that are used for the options that aren't included in the budget. So it gives you a one-page snapshot of the need and the details behind it, as well as the financials and where the money is proposed to come from. What we would like to suggest is that, again, these items are already in the base budget as presented with the 1.9. So if there was something either on these two pages or something else in the budget that you wanted to consider, that if council would make them an option, then they would sort of, notionally come out of the base budget and go to the option section. So at the end of the process, you'd be left with this list of options that you're going to vote and weigh on and establish what you want to fund. So if that works for council, it's a way to not have individual full-out debates and motions on every single change you want to have. Instead, general consensus that you want to move it to an option-type approach and vote on it towards the end with a weighted system.
Thank you, sir. Comments or questions on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess on that note, I mean, do I just say that I would like to make the second staffing request for the facility evening supervisor an option? Is that the way you'd like us to do it, Mr. CEO?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, again, this is a new process, so I would suggest that council would take a vote on moving that to an option, and then if otherwise every one will end up being an option if one person wants to.
Sure.
But whatever the chair and council wants to do as far as process.
I
The
can
aim
go-
is to not have a full-out
For sure, and that's
discussion
what
on every item.
And that's what I was just gonna say. I mean, I can go into why I would like to see it make it an option if everyone. I mean, that's fine.
Okay,
but
before we do that, I'll
Yeah.
just get some general feedback at first, in terms of the best way to approach this.
I think I approve this, but I really don't completely understand it. So I would like to have an explanation of exactly what this is going to look like.
Are you moving right to the
all
option
the
page?
position.
Okay, do you want to explain? You're looking for an explanation of the options?
No,
No,
position.
sorry, of the position. Can we have
Okay.
a discussion? You don't want to have a
Yeah,
discussion?
no, we will. I just was going to go around the table
Okay.
quickly and just, Councillor Thompson, you had your hand up, I think?
Just since in staffing in general, if either Mr. Matarazzi or Elliot could just give us a quick about the gapping and how we're dealing with these positions that all seem to have a June 1st start date. I just want to understand whether or not there's any implications for the following year as well. Just our general, how we treat these mid-year positions.
Okay, so just some general comments, and then we can go back and hopefully answer those other questions. Mr. Niederosny?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so not all the positions are gapped. It depends on how quickly we think we can rally and get them in the position. But you're right, the ones that are proposed for a June 1st date, then half of that salary would be included in the budget, and the 2018 budget, the full impact of those positions would be included in the budget. Yes.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you. So this is a different, we're commenting on the
Just
process.
the process.
So in the process, we used to have a binder, and it would have each department and all the spending and all the ask, and we had a sheet where it started, and we could pick off which ones we wanted to pull and talk about. So we're no longer doing that, so we don't have that sort of overall, where all that money goes, with the department spends. So we had that in the, in each presentation, that each person spent, had a budget and how much it was. And so, to me, I'm just losing all that sense. But, how does one fill that gap in understanding of what the, scope of what we're asking and doing?
Is it page 6.5?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, now, again, this is my first budget, so if I've misunderstood something, then I'm sure you'll correct me. My understanding is that the format you're seeing here is the format you've seen in the past. So, for example, the detailed information about spending would be on 6.5, which would show you the previous year and the projected this year on a area-by-area basis. And so normally in the past, my understanding is you would take that information and you'd have your discussion about, why did the staffing costs go up and what's in here. So that information is still here. What I thought we had done, as well as the various documents that were part of the past format, the only thing that's different is that in the case of staffing, we've added these individual sheets for any increase in hours or increases in full-time complement to pull that out and make it very visible. So it's supposed to actually make it easier for you to find those items. But certainly you may have questions about other budgetary amounts as represented on 6.5, and that would, I think, be more or less the process you did in the past. So if there was something in there that you wanted to ask a question, this would be the time to ask the director with the support of the finance department for more detail.
All right.
And then
So-
you could likewise create a new option if you wanted to, out of some other budget item that you wanted to adjust.
No, and I appreciate it. I don't have the time and the liberty to go through all this in some detail, others, but some may be in the same position as I am. So if I'm looking at 6.5, and it says personnel costs, 2016 projected 5,416,000. Under, I'm looking at 2016 year-end actuals, third column. That would explain, or perhaps it's better to do it in the draft budget, would explain, if I look on 6.4, you have that table there, 2 full-time, under linear assets, 26.5 full-time or equivalents. So that gives me an idea of the number of personnel. So in this case, I'm looking at 51, 66, 67 staff members that would all get paid under that 5.9 million. Do I read that right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that the total there is right underneath the chart. It's 68.5 FTEs plus 2 new responses. So that would be your total there for the 17 draft budget. Right at the bottom of that little org chart.
Okay,
In
so
dark,
there's,
it
so
says total.
I'm looking at the org chart on
Yep.
6.5, and you just pointed out that,
Right underneath the box there, it says total.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so my math ain't so good, is it? It's close though. And then there's the amount, total expenditures, personnel costs is 5.9. All right, so I'm just sort of getting a grasp of it. So that's, as we go through, I'll be able to encapsulate along those lines. Okay, and then the next page are the requirements and then the ask. And that's what those on 6.9 and 6.10. Thank you for taking a moment and letting me understand that.
Any other comments or questions on the process? Just, Councilor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You can stop me if maybe I think it does deal with the process because last year we developed the vacancy control program. And so I was just curious because part of that policy was that we would get a report on a biannual basis. We have yet to see anything, so I'm just wondering, I think it would be beneficial for us around the table to see that before we approve any new positions. So that's my feeling. I don't know how everyone else feels around the table.
That was when Pat Moyle was here.
But we instituted as part
Yeah.
of our
Just
policy.
So,
so-
so it's not fair to ask Doug, but
No,
maybe
no,
I can
I-
direct that
yeah.
to Mr. Elliott. If he might be able to help.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's, I think I understand the request. We had spoken about a vacancy control program in the 2016 budget process. There was some discussion that that was only for 15, for the balance of 15, but I'm not surprised that it was to be continued into 16. I agree, I don't believe that we've seen any reports come out of the CAO's office. Perhaps in the transition to the CAO's office, we've lost track of that reporting requirement back to council. I can work with Doug and HR to put something together, obviously not today, to come back to council. I'm not sure how long that will take us to do.
Thank you.
I'm going to, just a second, I go to Mr. Nader Rossi.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I'll add is I wasn't aware of the reporting requirement. I was aware of the new program, the vacancy control program, and I have been seeing the new form come to my desk when hiring is being asked for. I'm satisfied that the positions that I have approved were positions that were not easily identifiable as something to be changed around or converted, that they were operationally needed positions. And in fact, there were 1 or 2 vacancies that were being held while we were playing around with different structures, and so those jobs weren't posted right away. So, but again, we haven't done a report to summarize all that, and we certainly can if you want one.
Thank you, and I think that'd be great, and I think it would actually be beneficial, like I said, for all of us to have that information and take a look at it. And just, I mean, if anyone needs a reference, we did pass that in August 25th, 2015. So if you just need that as a reference. So. And yeah, thank you.
Any other comments then on just on the process, on how we may wish to move forward? So then, okay, so let me go back to the IES report then. Comments or questions? There's 2 options in here, two FTEs, which has been pointed out is included in the 1.9. Councillor Thompson.
Not to that, I just have some comments about the financials on 6.5. Can I do that first, or
Yeah,
would you
please.
rather deal
Yep.
with it? So I guess, as always, whenever there's a significant increase, I like to understand the rationale behind it. So for those who wish to follow along, under the expenditures component, all other expenses, in 2015, the actuals were $740,000. In 2016, we budgeted $745,000. Our year-end projected totals in 2016 were $935,000, and now our draft budget is just under $1.3 million. If you look at the percentage increase, it's a 72% increase. By necessity, I need to call it out and understand why are we having such a significant increase under all other expenses. Through you to Mr. Simonovskis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I'd like to do with that then, as it is such a large item, I would like to, my proposal would be to bring information forward as part of the next budget discussion so that we can detail that out. Because, hearing your concern, I don't want to just speak to it. I'd rather actually lay it out, if that's okay with council.
And I'm fine with the report coming back, but I think anytime you have a substantive increase year over year like that, there needs to be some additional information from me to have a comfort level with it. So I'm fine with you coming back with that. My second question, and I just want to go back to the whole issue of electricity and utilities. When I look at streetlights and when I look at utilities and fuel in the expenditures section, in both cases, the budget is going down rather than up. And so we keep talking about right sizing, we keep talking about increased electricity costs. I just want to get confirmation that the budget numbers that we've decided upon are sufficient to cover our needs.
Certainly through Mr. Mayor. So with regards to the streetlights, what you're seeing in the streetlight numbers for 2017 is the energy savings that we're anticipating. So we've taken our shortfall less, we've taken our expected savings less the shortfall in that item. And with regards to utilities and fuels, our fuel cost, whether it be natural gas or actually vehicle fuels, has actually come down. Now that we're making adjustments to account for. At one point in time, I guess it was 2 years ago, we had $1.40, $1.35 cost for fuel, for our fueling systems, and natural gas was quite high. So we're seeing savings in those elements, and the electrical costs have been adjusted as an increase within that budget as well.
That's great. I just wanted to hear the confidence in your voice on those numbers. I appreciate it.
But Councillor Tom? Well, I was just going to, following on Councillor Thompson's point, electricity costs keep going up, so, I mean, that's got to be part of the concern, because I think probably one of our biggest expenses is just the ice plants at the facilities. So
That is correct, and those
I
costs.
see Mr. Elliott sliding over.
Oh.
While you go, your closet there for some discussion.
His comment to me was basically under other expenses, there's a $380,000 debt repayment is in there, but that doesn't account for the entire difference, but that is a big part of the increase.
Debt repayment?
For the, yes, because the LED light program was actually funded through debt. It was funded through one of the provincial funding programs.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I see the eyebrows. The LED program was intended to be funded net zero from the operating budget, in that the savings would pay the debt. And so what we've done is the savings have come off the electrical line, and so that's why that budget is coming down, and the debt repayment is in that other expenses line. And so it is they're both in there, but you're seeing the electricity come down because of the LED conversion, but the debt repayment is on a different line.
I think that's fair, but I think at the same time, it should be, quite frankly, should be highlighted that way, because it does cause concern in terms of, as you know, as Councillor Thompson said, you know, our other line is up substantially. I've got Councillor Tom.
Thank you. So I guess then that, and I'll wait till the report comes back, but then that means that, you know, that's not an ongoing operational expense to run the town. You know, in theory, when that debt is repaid, then there will be, you know, the opposite to a tax pressure. It'll be actually some relief savings. And so it goes back to that old question about when we're doing these enhancements, should it come as an operational tax levy, or should it be something that's funded from our reserves? And so I guess I'd like to have, I don't want to have that conversation right now, but I'm happy to talk with Mr. Elliott about it, because if at the end of the day, we're going to make an ongoing $300,000 debt repayment as part of a tax levy, then at some point that debt goes away, and then you got all of a sudden a $300,000 decrease in our taxes, which I'll be interested to see if that ever comes. So I guess it's probably just a little bit of a philosophy of how we approach it. We had the same conversation with the Emerald Ash Borer, where we said instead of funding it through tax levy, we funded it through capital reserves. So, you know, it's just an approach.
Any comment, Mr. Elliott?
I recall that there was quite a bit of discussion around the funding and the financing of the LED project, and it was all included in those various reports. And we can have the discussion in the hallway, or we can have the discussion at another meeting. But I'd be happy to chat with Councillor Thompson.
It's absolutely an important discussion, and maybe Councillor Thompson, maybe the Finance Advisory Committee, this is something that should come to the Finance Advisory Committee for kind of, you know, fleshing out and how best to approach that, because and indeed, we all want to make sure that we're entirely clear on this.
We can, at the end of the day, maybe it's just me having a conversation with our Director of Finance to better understand the rationale behind it.
But I think
maybe
we
that
all
might be suffice.
want
For sure.
to be in on that.
That's fine then. Take it to the FAC.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to the kind of, and I apologize, I was out of the room for the first half of your second presentation, Elmar, and anyhow, so if you've explained this, maybe let me know, but with respect to personnel, I know you're asking for 2 new positions, 120 grand total, and those are already considered with respect to the 1.9, but the personnel cost part of the budget is going up by about $500,000. So is it possible that, and whether it's a report later or you'd explain it now, why there's such an increase over and above the 120 new request?
That certainly through Mr. Mayor, that I can explain. There's a couple of elements, and if you look on page 8.6, So there's COLA, which is $65,000. As well, there was a 6-8. In that table, the third line in the table has the step increases, which accounts for 65,000. We also transferred, so the way our operation works between the tax-based program and the water, wastewater rate-based program is we share resources. So hours are split between those two programs, and there was a need to push some of that time back onto the tax program because the tax program was consistently being underfunded and the rate program being overfunded essentially, or too many hours booked to the rate program. So a component of this, about 100,000, I think 100 to 150,000, is consistent with actually moving time back onto the tax program. So those are the two things that you're seeing. So you have the new positions, you have the COLA, and then you have an adjustment of where the staff hours are being budgeted for to deliver the programs.
Thank you. I just, I appreciate that. I guess I'd just like to see a bit more detail myself,
Yeah,
because
certainly.
even with the COLA added on to the two positions, it's still around $185,000, and it's, again, the difference of $457,000. So if that difference is, again, increased wages and some hours going back and forth, I think it just might make sense for us to take a look at that. Oh, and my next question is, so the facility evening guy, supervisor that you're looking for, on page 6.8, you talk about the facility rated increases, and again, that's only about 60,000 of 205. So what's the increase in facility contracts line? What is that?
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. So those are the contracts we have, whether it's for mechanical services, electrical services. We had a couple of renewals for our contracts this year. So the three primary ones were mechanical, electrical, and building cleaning contracts. And with those new contracts came new rates. So there's an increase in those costs.
So in total, around 140 grand.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphries.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies if something was already asked, stop me, that happens. So we're talking about the resources, if that's okay.
Part of it, yeah.
So the additional resource, just to the evening manager at the facilities. Will this person, through you, Mr. Mayor, be working weekends as well? Because I think weekends are really busy as well. I just wonder if it was a weekend thing or is that shift work? I'm just curious in terms of sort of the benefit of hiring this person.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we started piloting this concept in September of this year. And we want to continue that pilot to do exactly that, to actually provide the additional supervisory support evenings and weekends. Now, the scheduling of those hours may shift depending on a total work week as well as when the needs are. But the intention is to do two things really. Look at where the resource needs are. So if we start shifting our staff between facilities or shifting their hours across an evening or weekend shift to avoid or reduce our part-time dependence, but also bring in a supervisor who can then move between facilities and provide additional support where needed. Some of the issues might be around equipment failures or complaints or high demand evening during a particular game or a particular event where that resource can then be available to augment. So ultimately what I'm trying to get away from is not to resource for peak requirements, but to provide that supervisor to be able to move between the three facilities.
Perfect.
That's kind of the goal.
No, that's fair. I understand. That's perfect. And the other facility for your capital delivery of roads and full-time position, I totally understand why you want this to happen for sure. Previous to this role being, is this a new role? Is it a sort of a new position, a new creation of a role? It is? Please, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So what this will do, right now, we have our major capital delivery, which is done through one group, and that's sort of the Van Dorf and the Industrial Parkway type projects, very large projects. And then we have a number of smaller projects, whether it's sidewalk, bay replacements, curb replacements, catch basins. These are smaller projects that have historically been delivered through the operations group. What we're finding in the last 3 years at least is that there's a lot of effort for operations staff to do to oversee these contracts. which actually impacts their operational responsibilities, which do not involve capital, right? So it's their day-to-day operations. So there was pressure, and part of our lean review last year was to look at, well, the request for adding more operations staff. And when it was identified that, our operations staff were actually focusing on work that really isn't their forte, then let's not focus on adding more operations staff. Let's bring someone in who can deliver the services that we're actually doing, and then have the operations staff freed up to focus on their operational needs, thus reducing the demand for more operations staff. So it's an outcome of another review, and Councillor Marakis asked about sort of time study and where people are spending their time. And this was one of those examples where we're finding our operations staff spending too much time on capital, which really isn't what we're hiring them to do.
No, okay, no, great, I appreciate that, and I know that, I don't know if I can mention, but I know Stu Curtis retired, and he's a huge loss, I think, to our organization, so probably, is that, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but it's in a good way. He was a fantastic resource, and we're gonna miss him. Was he doing some of that work? I'm just curious, I don't understand the gap, if that's, and the experience as well with that loss, right? Sorry.
Through Mr. Mayor, yeah, he was doing some of this work as well. But really, a lot of it was the whole team, but it really was taken away from their operational focus.
That makes total sense. It helped me understand what this is and what the intent is behind it. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Marakis, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Mr. Simonauskas. Mr. Simonauskas, on the position, the contract position for the facilities evening supervisor. I'm just wondering, right now, as it currently sits, how many operational staff do we have working those after hours or out of regular hours?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it depends on the facility and depends on the time of the week. But essentially, we try to have 2 operators available in the evenings. Just to provide a little bit of background as to where we're shifting with some of this work, and it involves this request for this new position, is we're looking to, we've put all 3 facilities under, all 3 ice and pool facilities under one supervisor, where in the past they were split. So the ice facilities are under one supervisor, and all other facilities are under a different supervisor. So the purpose of that is twofold, is to create some synergies across the ice and pool portfolio, and then also looking at, can we get away with reducing our staff in any one facility, but then use the other staff to move them around throughout the evening. So as an example, if we have a particularly busy facility one night and we need 2 people there, we can take one from another facility and bring them to that facility, whether it's for an hour, whether it's for the whole shift, as well as then use a supervisor who can move between facilities. So there's a combination of trying to reduce our part-time hours, trying to shift our full-time staff to span sort of the whole peak periods, not just day shifts, and then use a supervisor as well as those staff within those three facilities as sort of flexibility to move them around. So it's getting to a point where we're trying to minimize our hours, but maximize our focus as to where those hours are most needed.
And I appreciate that answer, but I'm not seeing too many reductions. So all I'm seeing is an added item. So I guess my question is through you, Mr. Ross, as a follow-up. Do we have enough staff to take care of the operational of those facilities?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a good question. The short answer is not really, and this is part of the challenge. So we're trying to do this a couple different ways. We're trying to look at realigning the staff that we have to see if we can do better with what we have. But I do know there's pressures around the part-time hours. So I'm not saying this is a silver bullet. I'm not saying it's going to result in cost savings. What I'm trying to do is avoid cost increases right now. I'm resisting just adding more bodies to the budget. I'd rather do this and create some flexibility within the workforce we have than just carry on as we have been carrying on and add more bodies. So the answer is no, it's not going to save money. My hope is it's going to defer future costs, or at least defer them out for a year or 2, depending on how successful this program can be.
Fair enough. I guess I'm just thinking of it from a business aspect, and if we want someone to be in a supervisor role in this instance, and to be able to make a decision or move those staff pieces from one facility to another, I'd prefer us maybe looking at a better way of doing this. And what I would do is I would take maybe a supervisor that we already have within the company and say, hey, you know what, we're gonna up your portfolio, we're gonna put you on call, and we'll give you a little bit of extra, but we won't be spending this full amount to staff a whole new person in that role. And so that's where I'm coming from, and I think that that would be a better option or a better solution for this instance, because I really don't see the need to actually put a whole new body just to supervise staff that we already have doing the work. And so, you know, that's where I'm coming from, and that's what I would like to see. So that's why I said that I'd prefer to put this in the option category, and we can all, I guess, have a bigger discussion and try to figure out where we go.
Councillor Gardner, Councillor Abel, Councillor Kim.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Simonovskis. Did you say to add one supervisor for the facilities that have ice and pool functions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. So right now we have one supervisor who deals with the SARC, the ACC, and the AFLC. And this position would augment that supervisory role in the evenings and weekends. And if I may, the challenge we have is we don't have enough hours or physical supervisors to actually cover this effectively. Right now we're relying on the staff to ensure that everything's being delivered efficiently, and we're looking to provide additional support to ensure that everything is actually moving as efficiently as possible across all three facilities.
Because what I see sometimes, all the times in the evenings, is that we have one staff, well, only at the leisure complex, we have one staff person, and they're doing everything, and I can't see how one person can do everything, especially including security issues, because they're expected to do everything. So we're not talking about desk people here. Through Mr. Mayor?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, this is somebody who's going to be very, very dynamic across the three facilities. And we are also looking at specifically what happens during those peak periods, the evenings and weekend shifts of our facility, of our ice and pool operations, to see how we can do business a little differently to try and alleviate some of those critical pinch points, like when they're doing ice floods and other issues are happening, so that we can better balance their workload. Ideally, it's making sure we don't have too much resources there, but making sure we have resources available when they're needed.
Thank you. I'm willing to do this as a pilot project, but I would like some detailed reporting back on how this is working or not working. Thank you.
Councillor Abel, Councillor Kim, Councillor Tom.
So, Mr. Simonovskis, I look at it overall. You have shown where you've got some savings. I've heard your colleagues at the table speak about the LEAN program. I remember talking to you about the LEAN program over a year ago. It's a dynamic on efficiency, on morale, on training and development, succession, and all those things. And it's all those things that I come to appreciate what our staff bring to our town. Even though we cut development and training, you're still able to find a way to move forward. If you see that there's going to be more efficiencies and more backup support for all our facilities as we grow, so for example, I see that it makes sense to me that this person in a supervisory position, if he's not going to be called to go to a facility, he's going to have a lot of work to do that would support the people during the day. And so for me, it's very easy to see, and I also recognize that that it's important that we have that sort of backup as we grow and our hours seem to increase. There's a lot of activity that go on in the evening. It's not a 9 to 5. We have home shows, and if someone's having a difficulty and something comes up, you're going to have a guy that can come in at a high level and be able to assume any role at any time, and then could leave and go and help out at the town hall here, at the senior center. I mean, if you're asking for that recommendation to bring through, I can fully support that based on what I've seen. I mean, there's some other questions that are brought up, the other expenses. However, you said you will address those, so I can see staffing this. To me, it makes sense. It makes good service. It's going to make us more efficient across the board. This will save us money in other areas and will deliver a higher performance to our... So, thank you very much. I'll be in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Kim, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one comment and regarding the contract role. I, I've never come across a situation where people report to a supervisor or a manager who's in a contract position. So I'm thinking that that might be problematic over the course of a year when you have someone who's full-time complement that will be reporting to a temporary full-time person. So I just from a status perspective, I'm not sure whether that will work, and that will be problematic throughout the course of the year. And can you summarize again, or just quickly, the personnel cost goes up about $500,000 from 2016 to 17. Forgive me if I'm asking you to repeat that, but what was the reason for the huge increase again?
Certainly through Mr. Mayor. So we have the new positions that are part of that, the two new positions that you see in the report. Our cost of living increases, which are identified in the table around $65,000, as well as, oh, I have some more information here from the treasurer.
Breaking news?
Breaking news. Except that I can't, you know what, let him describe it because I can't read his writing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the change in the salary is, there's, the cost of living is 65.7. We've got the two positions, the supervisor and the capital works, capital delivery person. We have right sizing in there for about $250,000. It's some part-time and some contract work at facilities, and then the rest is $40,000 of step. So altogether, it's $457,500 or $437,500.
Okay, thank you. No, I didn't realize the right sizing portion was built into that as well. I guess my last comment is, I'm always wary of, I understand ELT's need to hire more people as we continue to grow. I know that there's a stereotype out there from residents that state that, government's always bloated, and I trust that we're pretty lean. And one of the things that we discussed at FAC last year was how do we determine what that ground zero is in terms of, the leanest structure of each department as we went through, Parks and Rec and IES. And there's some, the big divisions like yours, it's hard to confirm what is that exact lean area. And I wonder whether instead of, when there's a need, we hire to support that need. But one way to verify is, because we can't obviously just cut for the sake of cutting to see and experiment what that equilibrium is. And I wonder, is it possible to just keep on going with the staffing that we have until we find that pinch point or pain point? And what does that pain point look like? How does it hurt the service level, and what will that look like? And is it possible to head that pressure point before it really gets to be insurmountable to the point where residents will actually feel it for an extended period of time? And I think that's what I'm grappling with any time that we do have a new hire. That's all.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw, and I'll continue on this this position that we've all been talking about here, because, so let me just understand this a bit better. Right now, we have a facility supervisor who's here 9 to 5. So my question is, and that's been since the dawn of time, we've had that person at the town for how long, like a long time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the positions have been, we've had two facility supervisors since I've been here.
9 to 5 during the business hour.
Correct.
But I mean, even this report talks about how the majority of facility use occurs at night, and how there's no supervisor at night. So wouldn't it be better off to try and shift someone's responsibilities from 9 to 5 to night, and then try and make up the difference during the day with everyone else you have at town hall already? I mean, I guess arenas are like dominated by use and fitness facilities after work. People come out to take their kids to practice and use the gym and whatever. So yeah, I mean, for me, why not try and shift that burden first, and then if that doesn't work, then we can talk about hiring someone, because I guess my point is, if we have a facility supervisor after hours, and that's where the majority of our services are located, wouldn't it make sense to have that as opposed to during the day? I don't know if you have a comment on that or not.
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually would be happy to comment on both of the councillors' comments. Maybe the first comment with regards to how far do we go before it hurts. Part of this lean review that we do is to understand where it's going to start to hurt and then try to preempt that pain, because essentially that pain can result in public health and safety issues. It can result in staff sick time and staff absenteeism, which we have been seeing more of. It can result in people leaving. So there's a risk associated with pushing the envelope to the point that people start failing, because then we end up into a downward spiral. The goal with this, and this to Councillor Tom's question, the goal with this is to try to best balance our resources. I can tell you right now, the supervisor that we have who's managing the 3 ICE facilities has worked evenings, has worked weekends, has worked overtime, and there is a challenge with that. There's also other things that have to be delivered by the supervisor that are not staff direct activities. So there is essentially a full-time job. They're just dealing with other activities as well. So what we're dealing with, and what I am trying to convey to council through this exercise, is a new model of delivering the service in a way that provides the appropriate amount of management or supervisory effort to allow the staff to operate and be given guidance to a point that they can operate more efficiently. I can tell you that our part-time hours in the facilities are extremely high, over budget. And this is very concerning to me. And what that suggests to me is that we're putting our effort in the wrong place. So we are shifting, and there is anxiety around this, to be openly frank about how the staff feel about what we're doing. There is definitely anxiety around it, because we're shifting when people are working, when they're expected to be at the operation, and what the responsibilities are. The supervisory energy that we need to manage that change is critical as well for success. So there's a number of elements. So there has, if it provides any confidence, there has been a lot of consideration as to how to rejig this, and this, in my opinion, is the most effective way of moving forward. And if we can make this work, it will result in better service at least a manageable cost.
Thank you, and I appreciate the answer. All I was saying was that right now we have a facility supervisor, and he or she is 9 to 5. All I was saying is, why not, if we're having a pilot project that this is calling for, why not pilot that person working evenings and weekends when the majority of this stuff takes place, which is what the rationale is in this report. But I appreciate your answer, and that's just a comment.
Mr. Elliott, question to you. As we do in the capital budget, we occasionally will take an item and give it approval pending further feedback from staff. Could we do something like that? I mean, there's always sensitivity to new staff positions, and I think this is a more robust process than we've had in the past, but I still sense a fair amount of, I don't want to say unease, but it's a fair amount of questioning by council as to, the rationale for that and all the ramifications. So is it possible to look at, if council desires, of course, to look at, say, yes, we could approve this because we're looking at a June the 1st start date. Could we approve this pending further feedback from staff as Mr. Simonovskis is going to come back with a breakdown on the other category? Would that be acceptable from your point of view?
Absolutely. If that's the will of council, we can do that. Whether he could return that within the next 2 weeks, he might be able to, so that we end up with the complete approval, or so we can decide one way or the other before the end of the budget, or we could leave it open and at his leisure and bring it back prior to any posting of the position. So either way, if we want to be creative, we could do that. The other one is to flip this to the options list, as the CAO had suggested, and we have further discussion on in 2 weeks' time.
That information, if it goes to options, which is obviously an option, staff still has to come back to us and describe that, so.
That's correct.
It's 6-1, half dozen the other. I've got Councillor Humphries. No, Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, just a quick question. It still relates to the resource thing and why, and I understood we talked, do we have a lot of part-time work? Is the majority part-time in the facilities support area?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's not the majority, but it is a fairly large number. The best way to describe it is there is a need for part-time work. You want to have a base load of effort for our full-time staff. Part of this exercise is to actually look at our part-time complement to see if we do need more. If we're using part-timers as base load, then we're misusing part-timers. So part of this is then to analyze, do we need to convert some of that part-time money into another full-time position so that we go back to a truly part-time complement. So, so there's a number of things going on here that really require, that move us to what we're asking for.
Thanks. That's fair.
Council, I think with respect to, and we're just looking at the supervisory position, correct? That's the biggest concern. We either flip it to options because I think we're all looking for some more information, or we say we could approve it pending further, or we can go to Mr. Nader Rosny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor. My suggestion would be at this stage to consider flipping it to an option, gives us an opportunity to come back with more information within that option period. The concern I just thought of with respect to approve with pending further information is that if you pass your budget, it's on your levy. I mean, you don't have to spend it, but it gets kind of complicated. So I think if we can clarify it and have council make a decision one way or the other through the option process, that's probably a better outcome for council.
Councillor Maracus, you've been.
Thank you, sir.
Go to the bathroom.
I just wanted to speak to the procedure that we're undertaking right now. I mean, we're talking about efficiency within staff, and here we are, we're just going around in a circle. Our CAO mentioned we're going to look at doing a new process, whether we want to flip it to an option. And I'm just looking around, we basically had a discussion of whether we want this position or not. And so we're just going to kind of rehash it again after we get this new.
No, because everybody's going to remember what they said.
Yeah, no, so I'm just wondering is if that's the way we're going to do it, maybe we just need to come to a better understanding is if one of us wants to flip it to an option and there's a couple agreeable to it, maybe we just flip it to that option and let's have that conversation when it comes back. I would like to move it to go to option. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson seconding. Any comments? Yep.
If additional information is coming back, I'd like to understand the 2018 impact, because when I read it and I hear issues identified and I hear we're doing it and there's some benefit, but the timeline that we've been doing is too short to really speak to council, it leads me to believe that this so-called pilot program will get a report next year saying let's extend it. So, I'd like to see what the impact on our 2018 budget is, because from my understanding, there's an awful lot of requests for our 2018 budget, and we're already facing some significant constraints. So just in that report, I'd like to know what the impact is today and tomorrow.
Okay, so Councillor Maracus' motion is to move the facility supervisor position to the option section. All in favor? Contrary, that is carried. Back to Mr. Simonovsky's report, generally speaking.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The next question is, sorry, with respect to snow removal, obviously last year we had a light year, and so that's reflected in the budget in terms of snow removal?
Through Mr. Mayor, reflected in 2017 or reflected in actuals?
Last year we had a lighter snowfall than we anticipated, so the budget was less for snow removal. But my question is, the materials cost was higher, and so now I'm just wondering why it was the contract cost for snow removal was less, obviously because we had less snow, but the materials cost was higher than expected.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we go back to and I don't have a copy of it handy, but if we go back to the actual number of events that we responded to, although we might not have had as much snow as in past years, there was still a comparably similar number of salting events or ice control events. So there's two elements. Now the material costs, I know we've purchased additional materials in that year. I can go back and look at the analysis or the forecast for this year. So we are starting out the year or this season, we are starting out with some inventory already in our salt barn. And we did shift materials, so in the proposal, the overall proposal, the material cost did have a higher price tag. However, if there's a question, I can dive deeper into that particular item if that helps.
I guess I just wanted to raise it because, like I said, there was a discrepancy. The removal cost went down, material costs went up, and then my secondary concern of that would be we budgeted 260 again. So if this year is supposed to be worse, are we going to go over that budgeted amount? And so that's more of a kind of a half comment, half question.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Any comments or questions from Mr. Simonauskas? Councillor Gardner.
I just would like an answer to what Councillor Tom was speaking to about budgeting, rebudgeting for 260.
Mr. Simonauskas?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just pulling up actually the details of that line item.
I'm sorry, Councillor Tom, did I miss a question from you? Kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't as forceful. I'm sorry, I'm like exhausted, but I wasn't as forceful in asking it. But yeah, essentially, we're budgeting the same amount as the 2016 budget, and our costs last year were $45,000 higher, and we're supposed to get a heavier winter. So I just don't know if we're setting ourselves up to be in a bad zone.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, my suggestion would be, and I can go back and look at the number of events we had last year. I'm comfortable leaving it the way it is for this year. I think one proposal that would be coming on the table at some point in time is to look at actually how our winter program is managed to provide some stability in the seasonal variations by setting up a snow reserve, where the years that we have a surplus amount, that difference can go towards the reserve. In years that we have a deficit amount, then we can balance it off with a withdraw from the reserve. So I'm comfortable proceeding with the budget that we have, knowing past experiences, and then maybe we can move to that next level of sort of rate or snow program stability as far as the impact year over year.
Councillor? You good?
That's fine. And then, like I said, we're talking about getting some information back, and I just wanted to make sure that we get back what Mr. Elliott described to us verbally about the increase for the personnel costs. Perhaps if it could just be a part of the report with the other costs. You told us verbally, I just want to know if we could have it just included in the report.
We'll include it with the detail of the other.
Councillor Gardner, you okay then? Thank you. Any other comments or questions on Mr. Simonauskas? Madam Clerk, what motion am I looking for here then? Okay. So the motion then would be to approve the business plan, which is right there on the screen. Thank you very much for pointing that out. For infrastructure and environmental services be approved with the exception of the supervisory, facility supervisory position. Councillor Marakis, thank you. Councillor Humphries, second. Any further comments or questions on that? All in favor then? Contrary? That's carried. The next one would be Parks and Rec, but we have 20 minutes before we're finished for the day. Can you do that in 20 minutes, Mr. Downey?
I'll assume there'll be no questions from council after I'm finished, but
I'll go. I'm sorry? Finance. Quick finance.
Sure.
Page 6-27.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll see if I can walk you through this fairly quickly without repeating a whole bunch of what you saw already. Starting on page 627, an outline of what we are about and what we provide. There's a few little more additional details on each of the three managerial sections. My community strategic plan goals and initiatives for the year I mentioned previously, and our organizational structure is there, and I have one new request, and I mentioned that previously. My budget is increasing by $70,000, and if I just jump right to the summary of that on page 633, the new position is 15 of that. Part-time funding is another one of the new lines. The COLA is 42.5, and so everything else net is $3,000. So I'm certain that you've got a lot of questions about that. And so, in summary, The changes in the financial services area are driven by the new staffing requests and that cost of living for staff. With respect to the two new positions, I believe I touched on them earlier. One is for clerical assistants starting in June. It's a full-time position. As part of the vacancy control program, as we were about to hire one of the previously approved positions in our water group, we worked with IES and with Access Aurora, and we agreed that we would be transferring that position and a bunch of responsibilities out to Access Aurora. And so that program, that complement control program, is working. It's alive. It is working. But as part of that, there was a little negotiation going on, and a request for additional support in Access Aurora was given up in support of this position coming forward. Procurement services, as I mentioned, is under a lot of stress from demand for client service, demand for shorter cycle times, but we also have detailed record keeping for the process. Was the process followed, and the compliance, and all of those things. And so this position is to assist the procurement services. During the corporate realignment, a portion of part-time clerical assistance was left behind, and it came to us sort of in need as it is. And so this position is there. It's partially funded from water because procurement does a lot of work with the water repair and replacement program and the roads program, and so we've got it partially funded there. Another line item is just $9,000 of miscellaneous part-time capacity. $9,000 will just give us a couple of weeks of assistance in filings and record keeping and records management, and covering key positions during extended periods if we needed to. The funding will be landed in my division, but available anywhere that I need to deploy it. It just gives me the capability to backfill when I need to. Normally it wouldn't show up as a separate request, but in the guise of full disclosure, I know the CIO wanted to show all of the full-time requests as well as all of the step-ups of part-time requests, and so that's this $9,000 is in that category. And the other last one was this succession transition funding to move a person into a contract position as they move towards retirement, and then be able to recruit for the vacant full-time position, find the permanent person, and then cross-train and transfer that corporate knowledge. And that's one-time funding. And so I think in the order of, in the interest of time, Mr. Mayor, that's very succinctly my $70,000 ask is 2 new positions, some COLA, and $3,000.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Strangely enough, Councilor Maracus has the first question. Steele second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I'm okay with this one. I just had one question for you to Mr. Elliott. It's actually got to do with, I figure I have you in front of us now and speaking, so on tab 14 in the overall, within the, I know everyone's going to say, obviously I'm asking about this, but the training and development, I noticed that it's gone up 94% this year. And so I'm just wondering for our next meeting if we could have a breakdown of why it's going up 94%. And I think that would be useful for all of us.
You taking that direction? Mr. Nadarosny is taking that direction. Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have some materials prepared, and maybe we can hand that out, Mr. CEO, at the end of this meeting, and we can then give you a chance to review it for the next.
And that would be great. Thank you.
Whether it specifically answers your question or not, I'm not sure, but
Yep.
we have something.
I'm sure you'll see me in your office at some point this week.
Any other comments or questions on this particular item? Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, and maybe I'm not understanding this properly on page 34. Talking about the budget impact for this position. So it's going down in 2018.
That-
The levy portion.
That's correct. For 2017, there's actually 7/12ths, and for 2018, there would be 5/12ths of the impact on the tax.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to Councillor Thompson, Councillor Maracus? All in favor? Contrary? That's carried.
Do communications if you want. 29.
We could move to communications.
Or would you like to do corporate revenue and expense?
What page is that, Mr. Elliott? 637?
67.
67?
67.
Where would you like to go?
Okay, corporate.
I think I can fit in 10 minutes. I'm not sure if Seth could.
Page 6-67, Council. Corporate revenue and expenses. Mr. Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very pointed, almost a line-by-line detail of what's in this budget. There's very clear, in my opinion, very clear disclosure as to what's in this budget. These are the things that are not specifically allocated or accountable to any one director. On page 667, I'll just run down the list, and in the pages behind are some notations as to what these are. But townwide gapping, this is the $150,000. We budget for 100% attendance during the year, no turnover. Then on this line, we budget for that turnover that may happen. When somebody vacates, their chair may be empty 6 to 10 weeks. And so we've got $150,000 of savings overall for the corporation. There's never any actuals attributed to this line item, though. The retiree benefits are expected to go down a bit this year because we've got people reaching, this is benefits for early retirees until they reach their normal retirement age. And so we've got a couple reaching that age point. Cost reallocations, this is the line item for the cost charges for general overheads from the corporation, from the tax base, and we charge it to the building services group because we provide them with office space and insurance and different things. And so this is the charge to building services to be paid for by building fees. So that's a cost recovery, and it's negative expense in this line. The audit fees are unchanged. This is the corporate audit fee. The council contingency account is unchanged at 35. WSIB claims costs is estimated at 85. Down in the revenue side, there's an offsetting draw from WSIB reserve to pay for this, equal amount. The capital loan payment is for the debt on the SARC. And the contribution to reserves is to pay for, this is the gas tax going into reserves, the OCIF going into reserves, the library payment to pay the debt, and those three are on the revenue side, coming in on the other side of the page. And there's also a contribution to the Green Initiatives Reserve, which used to be our bullfrog funding, and we said we would now contribute that to green initiatives every year. The next line is a contribution of reserves of excess SUP revenues. This is something that was new last year. This year we're budgeting only $136.9 of excess SUPs over our budget. And so this is the contribution of those two reserves. Contribution to capital, this is the cash to capital amount. The increase of 243 is part of that 1% that we spoke of at the opening. In-year tax adjustments are up slightly. We believe that because of the reassessment for 2016, there will be a number of extra appeals of the reassessment values, and we may end up with some slightly higher in-year tax adjustments for 2017. And the other has gone to zero. This was where there was a draw from rate stabilization last year. So that's the corporate expenses side. Perhaps I could pause there and ask if there's any questions on any of those, and then I'll go to the revenue side.
Councilor Maracus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Elliott. I just got a quick question about the council contingency amount. Actually, I'm just curious what's left in it for this year.
I'll email it to you before the end of the day.
Thank you, sir.
Carry on, Mr. Elliott.
Corporate revenues to the table on page 6-70. Penalties on taxes. We believe that having resolved a number of long-standing outstanding accounts and tax sale accounts, there's going to be a slight decrease on the revenue from tax penalties. And so we've dropped that by $75,000. The investment income is staying flat, as I mentioned earlier. The interest from hydro, as part of the 1% fiscal strategies budget, this 100 is part of that. So we've dropped it from 200 to only 100. So that means that in 2018, it should go to 0. Federal grants, because of the accounting rules, we have to process this through as revenue. So both, here's the gas tax, and on the next line is the OCIF federal and provincial grants coming into us. And on the other page were the contributions straight out to reserves in equal amounts. Transfers from the DC reserves, this is to pay for the SARC debt and the internal debt for the library. So this is coming in from the development charges to pay for those two debt line items. Transfers from other reserves, this is different things. We've got 85,000 for WSIB. There's a detail of what is here on page 672, but these are inbound revenues to support the operations in various ways. Payments in lieu of tax, this is a revenue that comes from federal properties and provincial properties. They're not allowed to be taxed, but I'm allowed to send them something that says, if I could tax you, this is how much you could pay, and they pay it. It's called payments in lieu, and they're pretty good about paying. And then supplementary taxes, these are the taxes on new properties that are newly assessed mid-year, and we all know about those. So we're budgeting 561, but on the previous page, we said the contribution of excess was going to be 136.9, and I believe that brings us down to 425 of planned reliance on supplementary taxes for the year. And that, Mr. Mayor, concludes my my comments on corporate revenue and expense. But as I said, the details are pretty clear here. Many of them are kind of accounting, finance related, gas tax, regulatory compliance stuff.
I don't see any hands. Councilor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, the payments in lieu of taxes, do we charge them a 6% admin fee the way the region charges us? I'm just curious if we can do that.
You're gonna have to drop that one pretty soon.
But it's, you know, it's 6%. That's a lot of money.
I tried once.
Okay.
And it doesn't work. But thank you for that. And with respect to the remaining contingency, you've got 14,600.
Any other comments or questions on corporate revenues and expenses? Motion to approve, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tom, all in favor? Contrary? That is carried. It's 5-2. Ms. Stephanie, can we do your communications in 5 minutes? I'm sorry? Oh, we could do council one then. 674? This one's shorter. 674. Who's going to speak to this? Mr. Elliott? Mr. Elliott. 674, which is council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, this council administration is the offices of the members of council. It's separate from the CAO's administration, and it provides the offices of the mayor and council. It provides educational grants to the schools, and it provides also a little bit of funding to advisory committees. You'll see that there's 9 elected members of council and 1 full-time staff member, being the mayor's assistant. The budget primarily is unchanged from last year. You'll see that the conferences line item is unchanged at 12,100. It's pretty much a flatline budget with the exception of the COLA for members of council and staff. I think that's my 3-minute presentation, sir.
Well done, sir. Comments or questions on this? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, under conferences, so you're saying the budget is $12,000 for conferences for next year, and that would include all AMO and all FCM conferences? Or is there another byline for that?
That's correct.
Council may want to reconsider that. Next year is the 2017. I know that there may be a number of people on this council that choose to go. It is, both are in Ottawa, so there aren't flights, but there are hotels. So given what I understand will be quite the conference, because they're both celebrating 150th, you know, I'm not sure if that 12,000 will be sufficient for all members of council should they wish to attend them. So it may be something we wish to, you know, come back to. But for myself, you know, unless there is under other dollars for those conferences, I don't think 12,000 is sufficient to allow all members of council to attend those conferences in Ottawa this year. So I'll put a motion on the floor,
Yeah,
but
please.
everybody's got a little looking at me like I'm you know, I'd say maybe,
Well, 2015, we did 18.9, so.
yeah, so I'd say 20.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. Really appreciate it. Through you to maybe Mr. Natarazi, maybe you could just come back and maybe supply us with a number that would support if every single member of council attended both conferences. If you can come up with a rough estimated number on that, maybe that's something that we might want to look at as setting the budget at. I'm not sure. I mean, considering the training and development for staff has gone up 94%, I think maybe we can put the council one up a little bit.
Okay, well, so we can't approve this yet.
For the time being, you know, I'll put a amendment on the floor to increase it to 20. A long time ago, I don't know how many years ago it was.
27, wasn't it?
It was 27, it used to be 3,000 per person, but then we pooled it to 27. I don't know if 27 is necessary because there are no flight costs associated with going to Ottawa for the most part. But, so for the moment, you know, why don't we put 20 on the floor for conferences? And, you know, between now and when the budget is final approved, I'm sure we can get a little bit more detail on what it could cost.
Is there a second for that? Councillor Tom, thank you. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Contrary? That is carried. So that would change that one line item to 20,000. Okay. All right, then back to the main motion as amended. Do we have a mover and a seconder?
No.
Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Humphries, Councillor Kim. Okay, back to the main motion as amended. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. It is now 4 o'clock. Well done. Thank you, staff. May I have a motion to recess? Councillor Tom, Councillor Kim, all in favor? Adjourn. We're not recessing? Okay, all right. That's the motion to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.